Well, hello everyone. It's like a good evening, and then talk about right here, if like paid in full, and basically that you see right here is I want him do right here is a pen sketch right here of it's like of me right here, and if this was right here was me that was handling any kind of cash, and this topic cash using this what you call like image the image brightness resolution of about only about 40 or so percent. It is on so for with Photoshop here, but you see right here is this right here would be a talk about right here is toward it that a sketch right here, and I'm sure anybody like Warren toward it. Yeah, whenever you first get started with something and thinking about is toward it about how much work it is necessarily, but you see right here, I was also thinking about as to where anything that includes like what you call your paying in full is like for overdrafts. And I know if anybody who has had what you call any kind of account and thinking about as to where after you get manage the bills and you'll pay the pay the bills and as well as any other type of finance it's like finances that you'll be working on especially. And there's going to be some times to where that there's you're going to start seeing what you call some negative like readings as to where that that you spent a little bit more than what was in the account, or that there was what you call the financial, it's like the financial issue to where that you gone below, it's like the minimum it's like, or for the maximum. But anyway, but you see right here, this right here is a sketch right here, and I'll go ahead and use right here. It's like a little bit of green right here, and I know I use green, by the way, just to show us like this was what you call like yeah, the green stuff. But I was also thinking about using one of my photos also. But if anybody like say that they like looking at some of my freehand work also, but you see right here would be an example right here of me if I were to be what you call handling cash. And at this, and I know that if anybody were to say that, do people would they rather receive cash other than if it's going to be by check or by credit card or anything like that? So if anybody warns us toward it, yeah, that if people say, you can go ahead and make mine in the cash, but but I, and you may have seen it on some of those TV shows too, but still that if anybody warns us toward it, yeah, that. I'm not trying to make this look like anything like what you call like on a dollar bill, but just basically to where that if anybody like warrant to where whenever they first get started though, but whenever they get started, you're bunching the wallets and then but I remember that back those couple years ago though is to where that you have right here is to where that any issues though that come up especially, but those couple years ago that whenever I was what you call like you know working it out to where that working out the amount of money that you're setting aside especially, and we're like weren't to where that yeah that you would save up your money besides the piggy bank if it was going to be what you call a certain amount of cash, and you're like weren't to where that hey that you would kind of use rubber bands, you would keep some of it all organized in rubber bands. And so that's just a thing that I mean I don't know if too many people do that to where they if they're going to have a certain amount of money in cash, and then they're going to go ahead and what you call is like a you have like a have it all together in rubber bands, but really that something that you may see at the casino, right? So if anybody say if you're going to be gambling maybe for some money, if you think you're going to maybe be winning some money especially, but you see right here, it's like examples right here of this right here would be like say for cash right here, and then if anybody knowing about like yeah if anybody say yeah beside about for anything about it's like for how you use your fingers just to be able to count, and you're like warrant or that yeah that about how you do the math necessarily, but back those couple years ago I used to thought that it was pretty neat to be able to what you call that you would that you'll be able to the count it's like have a big use a rubber band, it's like have a big roll of money. I'm like if you were to save up enough just to be able to make a roll of money, and then have like a certain place, and then anybody say that yeah if it needs to be a hiding place, it seems like sometimes it does, it needs to be a hiding place so that way that you can maybe forget about like forget about it later on, and then you'll be able to find it. So it seems like at the time that you really had to make it, and then I mean, you had to make it and then forget it and then find out as to where if that's where it was, and it's like you have a little bit more money saved up than what you thought you had. But really, I don't know if I really recommend anybody doing it, but really ways about how to keep money and how to save money especially. And that's just a thing is toward it. Put it maybe put the money somewhere where you're only going to maybe check maybe once a month. I guess sometimes it helps us is that to drop a few coins and dimes and nickels into a piggy bank. But if you're going to be counting by cash, and you're like Warren toward it, maybe if it's just maybe a couple of dollars, or maybe about maybe $10 or maybe $100 or something like that. And people may think as toward it really seems impossible really to say, but the way we think about this is like I talk about for like any services like for paid in full, and I'm also think about it's like about the student loans expenses as well. Is that talking about with the amount of money that it's like if it's borrowed, and then knowing about for what I gotta do, just be able to work out payments as well. But it's like for what does paid in full, compared to like between full and empty. But for like full and empty, I'm sure most of us know is like what empty basically means as to where you don't got anything, you don't have any amount of money. It's empty, contains zero, and then full basically means it's like to where it's you can't hold anymore. Like but still, I'm sure most of us will probably be waiting for like anything such as to where a full pocketbook. So if anybody wants to where yeah that think about as to where what can you do just to be able to get a full pocketbook compared to your like Warren tour that really that if anybody's going to be in that situation tour that they're going to be dealing with an empty pocketbook, but really that and I know that we may think that it's the only way it can really happen is if you're going to be having any play money. If you're going to be working with any kind of play money, then you may see a lot of that. But still, that for anything about budgeting as well as finances as well. But this right here will be me right here, and if anybody were warned, where if you had this amount of money, and the way I drew this, it was basically as to where I was be explaining as to where that yeah, if I had like what you call a desk right here, to where I had about I would say about maybe altogether about maybe $700 worth of savings, something like that. If anybody probably say but it seems like you need at least 7,000. But still, that if anybody probably say that they were able to save up their money, those what you call those 13 weeks or so, just to be able to save up to at least $700. And $700 seems like not enough nowadays, but still that compared to 1,700, but still that with $700 that. Back in the earlier days, it's like that if you had $100 and like people probably think about, well, I don't know if they look at you as rich, but like Warren to where people would probably say that they would like to see it, but back in whenever I was growing up, of course, back there in my childhood, it was like $20 was and $50 was considered a lot of money. So whenever we think about this right here and think about really about what is considered a lot of money. And I can also mention about here about like red zones, and you're like Warren Tour, yeah, that between red and blue, if we were like Warren Tour, we have right here for red and blue. Red and blue basically means like the blue right here. Basically, if you want to look at this as like a plan right here, it's like any type of a goal or achievement plan or so. The blue would basically mean is toward it you got quite a bit of money in there toward it. Yeah, you can use it for whatever you like to have, or it'd be compared to what you want to have, and maybe anything else that you may need later on. But then the red, we more likely know that red basically means like for be alert. So if anybody will warrant toward it, yeah, red basically means is toward it. That any amount of money that's coming in, it's got to stay in. You can't go anywhere. It can't what you call slip out into the wrong hands. It can't really. It can't just you can't just disappear. It's got to go to something important. So think about it to where like red zone, and if anybody wants to where there's going to be yellow zone, and if anybody warns as to where, how often do you see that, the yellow zone? And it's like you have the yellow zone, and the yellow zone could more likely mean as to where that well, it's that you can use it for anything that you like, but you just gotta stay cautious. Or if it's about as to where that be prepared to pay this. And if there was any type of yellow zone, and I'm sure that they could probably say as to where that's what you call you to be prepared. Be prepared. If you get a bill, be prepared to be able to make sure you have enough money to be able to take care of that. But and then as well as got a spot right here. If I want to go ahead and add another spot for a zone and make that, if anybody like warrant, or if I want to use maybe the black, but purple, I'm like really purple or blue, orange. Like I know I probably have other colors I can maybe use, but I'll go ahead and use orange. Orange is for like say maybe for how for like any amount of money that they say is that for like a coupon, if you want to say like a coupon, to where that if it's anything that's related to like maybe discounts, or if it's going to be about any special offers, special buys, anything that's going to be on sale. And so like credit hours, if you're going to say you'll be getting points or so by credit hours, but still I guess like I say that's a little bit different compared to cash. But the idea that I was coming up with is talk about for like Cash ID especially. But anyway, but talk about for like paid in full. Now I'm sure that most of us will probably think is to where that a lot of the stuff that we may hear about, especially to where any amount of money that we may get, especially on a tax return, that sometimes it's something that may think is to where that really that it's that really you just really had to make a certain amount of money. I'm like, it seems like at the time that really does it take 3 years or 4 years just to be able to get to our mailbox, just to get our address? Or is it the fact about us to where that well, you're just not working hard enough, but still that and now I'm sure that there are some places that they may say is to where if you start using the new services or so, and thinking about for all that hard work that you're working on, and thinking as to where that likely they'll be able to work it out to where you'll be able to save a little bit of money that way. But still, what does pay in full basically mean? And it basically means, like, if anybody were to say use that word or phrase, is to where that they ask you to work more on payments, and work on if it's going to be up to 30%, up to 20%, up to 10% or so, work on those payments. And it's like anybody like Warren, to where a lot of times it's like between grace periods of about 30 days or so, or 90 days. But this right here seems like to anybody that if they were to see cash, then you're like Warren, to where a number of things that you can do with cash, right? It's like whenever you see cash, you feel like you how should I say that? I'm like that you feel like what you call a million words, as to where a number of things that you want to think about. Something proud, you're made out of gold, whichever something you're proud of achievement. But then whenever you get maybe a gift card, or maybe check, or if it's going to be money order or anything like that, anything that's related to like the money is on there, but then it's not actual cash. So if anybody will wonder, well, really, what's the difference between cash or check or credit card? And you're like, Warren, really, that's not the actual money. If you want to call it like the folder, if you want to call it like the pocketbook, the folder, that the check is basically like a folder. The money is in there, but it's not the actual money until the system reads the transactions of the processing systems and stuff, stuff like that. So you're like Warren, that between cash and credit card, like for check, but still that anybody like Warren, really, if that really replaces cash. But really, I'm like, if you're going to be paying a bill by cash, and like I say, well, you won't be able to you pay cash by electronic service. It's got to go in the account. It's got to go in the pocketbook, electronic pocketbook, before it can go to this bill or that bill. So you're like Warren, and I know like with anybody that the overdraft, what does overdraft basically mean, like for anything about overtime, that you're like Warren, that for you'll go above you say the maximum. And I know that happens to quite a few people, and know that if it's about interest, and I know with anybody that may warrant or about interest, and sometimes we may think that being charged interest is unfair because what does interest basically mean is toward that they may charge you for like, which is the amount of money that was borrowed is like if it basically means is toward if you got to borrow more money, then the interest rate goes up even more. Or if it's a bad fact about it, to where you only made 2 payments out of those days, out of those grace period days, and you were supposed to make at least 5 payments or so. So it seems like that all depends on what goes on too, but still, that it's like some that may say is that for anybody who's just getting started, it seems like to where does that mean is to work more work the better, or does that basically mean is to where the more work, then it's like well that means it's like hey, you're in trouble. And if anybody like Warren Tour really that how will we know necessarily to where if there's any type of danger zone or any kind of secure zone or anything like that? Anything about, which say red flags and blue flags or anything like that? Especially if it goes by the pocketbook. So if anybody were warned or that, if you're going to be going through your wallet and thinking about it, or if you're not going to be looking for any money or necessarily, and you're like, say, besides the insurance cards or anything like that, and you're like, warrant or okay, I'm like, I don't know if all wallets have a mirror or or if they have like, say, nowadays that you go in there just to open your wallet just to check what time it was or anything like that. But still, that really about how many of us really go open our wallet just to get a piece of candy. I'm like, just for candy. And do we keep our candy in our wallet? I'm like, maybe breath mints or anything like that. Maybe bubble gum. I'm like, do we carry bubble gum in our pocket? It's like in our wallets. And you're like, Warren, to where that 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 more likely is that why would you want to even keep bubble gum inside of a wallet, especially if it's only a certain size? But like we're like Warren, to where that number of things that you may want to keep in there, if it's a passport, your driver's license, or anything like that. But you're like Warren, to where that with this amount of work right here, we can take it anywhere where we want you just to be able to pay a bill, have access to it whenever we need to, whenever we want. But on your hand, you're like Warren Tour. What do you do whenever it's not there right away, huh? And some that may say is Tour, that's whenever it's like the bill can't get paid. But some that may say is Tour that that's whenever it's a good idea to have a backup plan handy. But the backup plan more likely would be is Tour that well, if you just gotta do what you gotta do. But still, and I can tell anybody here that drawing pictures, I'm like, do drawing pictures necessarily work just to kind of give me an idea and just get my mind off the stress and off the pressure about for what's going on with financial reasons as well as for anything that's on file especially. So anything that I may want to share also, and if anybody like Warren Tour, what does it usually mean whenever you share? It basically means is to where it's you're actually allowing this other person or allowing the group or so to look at what you were working on especially. So if anybody were warned toward it, that you remember those back in those days toward it, they ask you maybe to share something, and one of those would have been toward that, that maybe if it's what you call some candy, or maybe if you want to share, maybe the TV, the television set, or anything else, maybe your Legos, or maybe your Lincoln Logs, or maybe that's like anything about maybe the play toys, like it's especially inside the bed, coloring books or anything like that, anything that you would think that you want that they say they ask you if you can share it with somebody else, and it's like allowing them to play with the stuff that's like, but still that if anybody were warned toward it, back in those days that you want to have your, it's like if you get something that you want to have it, like if everybody say, well, if you don't mind sharing your radio, it's like turn the radio on this broadcast station and allow the group to listen to it, especially if they're listening to the game. And you're like, well, it's my radio. You get your own radio. So if anybody were warned, or if you were to go out and buy a radio, maybe from your first paycheck, and thinking about his tour, that yeah, especially if anybody were like, well, if they've been there tour, that if anybody say, remember those stories about his tour, that you buy a radio and somebody somebody knew where that radio was, and they decided that they get in the closet or wherever. It's like they decide to pull it out and listen to the game, and it's like, hey, that's my radio. Well, you don't mind sharing, do you? I can, well, this time I don't, but please ask my permission first. But still, that like I say about between yeah, between yours, mine, and ours, as well as knowing about for overdraft. But basically, that I don't know. I'm like, I really don't know what the whole story would goes by between which working with taking care of the bills, the loans, and as well as any other type of agreement. And that they say for anything about it's like for school expenses, if it's going to be maybe car expenses, and you're like wanting to overdraft between paid in full as well as for the service. And it seems like the truth of the matter is that yeah, that they ask you to use service, known to be qualified for maybe a special offer or so that they may say is like maybe if it's going to be anything about maybe special offer or anything like that, that they would probably say is to where yeah, that some that may say that you had to be a member for at least a year with us or 6 months, and that your deposit would need to be about a certain amount also. And if most of us have heard that before about non-refundable, and I know that if anybody will warrant or that yeah, that maybe the cost of vacations, the airline tickets, and maybe the rental cars or anything like that, and you're like warrantor that you're for paid in full. And so that basically means us to that yeah, that the amount of money that's like a deposit, deposit, and some people that may warrant or yeah, deposit basically means is to that that some that may think about is to where they kind of just to kind of understand it a little bit better is to where that it's basically to where that you make plans ahead of time, and then for the amount of the cost of the trip or so, and cost of the event or something like that that's being worked out, especially it's already paid for, but then you only have about maybe a certain amount of days, and after about maybe 30 days or so they may say that it's it's not, it's refundable after a certain amount of time, but then after that it's like yeah, well, it's possible chances it's like non-refundable. But and I know like with anybody, if they're going to be reserving any tickets, airline tickets online, or if it's going to be anything about paid in full, especially about car insurance, maybe buying a car, or if it's anything about college education, any other expenses, they probably don't like that to where that they work hard for their money and find out as to where that some of those expenses they say is non-refundable. And also it's like if anybody were a warrant where especially if it's about the electric bill or if it's about maybe medical costs, anything like that, that you're like warrantor that you're for paid in full, and that it's like knowing about. I'm like really that for the amount of payments that you're able to make within that certain period of time. So it's let's just say if it's about 15 weeks, 15 weeks is to where they ask you to make a payment of a certain amount, and but some that may warrant about interest too. Interest that we may think that, like I mentioned before, is to where it's unfair to have to pay interest because I know with like any students, they're like warrant where that interest that whenever we pay interest, it seems like to where that you're paying price on top of price, and for anything that you're doing just for what you calls like a for any permissions or if like anything about is to where that yeah that some places that they may charge you interest rates, and sometimes we may think that that's unfair. Maybe the fact about is to where that one of those would be one of those reasons could be is to where if it's going to be a certain amount. But then let's just say if you are willing to do the math and then you posted a payment in on time, or if it was about the fact about the date, maybe a negotiating agreement with you about something, and that's whenever that they may say that anybody who's just working on it, or it's like go by the rules as to where if you had to borrow a certain amount and then they say that then the price gets bigger. But at the time, it seems like to where if they're going to be having a job, that yeah, it's all about. Seems like it's all about is to where maybe the the more work, the better. And then maybe you'll understand a little bit about how it works, or if it's a bias to where, yeah, it's all about putting more stress and more headaches on the table. But still, that for the amount of work, that more likely that I try to manage as well. But talk about for paid in full. Paid in full basically means is to where that, yeah, that there's certain amount of payments, and working out payments, as well as you work with the company, is like when they work with you especially. But you have right here, this right here was me counting the cash right here. Back whenever I was young, I know I mentioned this a number of times, but maybe one thing I've only mentioned about one time is that to where about rubber bands, about having the cash dollar amounts organized into a rubber band, and then watching it, I guess say watching the amount of money grow. And if you're going to say like, yeah, I don't know if anybody has tried that before, and some that may say it don't work because that it's like the rubber band, it's made to hold stuff, but really that if you're going to, like they say is toward it, keep it in one spot. Keep it in one spot that's not what you call usual, to where that spot, that certain location around the house, to where that yeah, that where it is. You're gonna go ahead and take $1 out of it, or maybe take 50 cents out of it or so, to go buy something like maybe a soda or a candy bar. And but still, that if you would just if anybody say that you try to get in a habit to where you just put one small deposit in at a time for those maybe 15 weeks in a row, and I'm sure that you will be able to add up a real good collection of a rubber band, and a collection of them. But it don't have to be a rubber band necessarily. But that was just an idea. It could maybe be like a folder, a certain location that you can keep a certain amount of money, safe and secure, and then to where that you may think about is to where that you have another place where you keep money saved up to, and so you save up for where you want to pay bills, especially. But especially if you're going to be paying the bills, especially in his like with the savings account. But still, that ways, just think about your ways of how to save up money. And when we do any type of spring cleaning around the house, it seems like that we tend to find money around, and you may not know that you had it, and you're like, oh, where did this come from? But anyway, but they have it. Talk about save for the paid in full, May 25 and Matthew 31. Thanks for watching. Have a